Hello, I'm Esther Gitu Yuat. It's Monday, May 29th. This is Africa 54. Bola Tinubu has been sworn in as Nigeria's president on Monday at a ceremony in the capital Abuja under the cloud of a disputed election and pressure to quickly improve economic and security conditions. A recent report says that despite recent military gains against al-Shabaab, Somali security services are unlikely to be fully ready when African Union forces leave the country by the end of 2024. We'll have analysis. And Republican and Democratic House leaders express optimism that they will get enough votes in favor of raising the debt ceiling. All this and much more coming up on today's Africa 54. We begin our broadcast in Nigeria, where Bola Tinubu was sworn in as Nigeria's president on Monday at a ceremony in the capital Abuja under a cloud of a disputed election. Tinubu is also under pressure to quickly improve economic and security conditions. The 71-year-old Tinubu is a southerner from the same party as outgoing Muhammadu Buhari, the 80-year-old northerner and former army general stepping down after 2 terms in office. Tinubu was declared winner of the February 25th election with 8.8 million votes and the required number of ballots across 2/3 of Nigeria's states. Ebenezer Obadare of the Council on Foreign Relations, a Washington-based think tank, says it is possible for an individual believed by many to be personally incorruptible to preside over an administration that is nonetheless defined by corruption. But Tinubu sought to assure Nigerians of security, saying, quote, "We're here to further mend and heal this nation, not to tear and injure it."
Our administration will govern you only on your behalf, but never rule over you. We shall consult and dialogue, but never dictate. We shall reach out to all, but never put down a single person for holding view contrary to our own.
Tinubu takes over the leadership of Africa's most populous nation with an in-tray filled with economic woes and grave insecurity. Nigeria's new president, Bola Tinubu, begins his first term as killings and kidnappings for ransom are still rampant in the northwest. In 2014, Boko Haram raided a government secondary school in the town of Chibok and seized hundreds of schoolgirls. Many of the girls have been freed through negotiations, but scores more remain captive. Timothy Obiezu has more from Abuja in this report narrated by Vincent Makori.
On the night of April 14, 2014, Yagana Yamani heard gunshots and explosions outside her school hostel.
We are trying to know what we are going to do.
We were trying to figure out what we were going to do that night when 2 men came and told us, "Girls, come here. We are soldiers. We are here to protect you."
We are here to protect you.
Those men were in fact fighters from the Islamist extremist group Boko Haram. The militants abducted more than 270 schoolgirls that night from the government secondary school in Chibok. Yagana says she and some others jumped out of the vehicle taking them away and fled into the wilderness.
We spent
We spent 2 days in the bush before we got home.
The mass abduction immediately triggered global outrage and mass protests with the hashtag #BringBackOurGirls or BBOG. 9 years later, the majority of the Chibok girls have been rescued, but some 80 are still being held captive. Enoch Mark's daughter is one of them. He says his wife died 2 years ago from trauma about their daughter's abduction.
I've been thinking I've been thinking, I don't know what to do. It led to the death of my wife. I know it's trauma that forced my wife to go to the grave.
It's a trauma that forced my wife to go to grave.
Nigeria's military has vowed that every last one of the abducted girls will be returned home. This month, authorities rescued a Chibok girl after 2 other girls were rescued 2 weeks earlier.
She was once married to one Abu Yusuf, who she later divorced before getting married to one Bala Muhammad, also known as Abu Jidira, a Boko Haram terrorist, IED expert.
Nkeki Muta is the Abuja chapter head of the Chibok community, which holds monthly meetings to remember the girls still in captivity. Muta says authorities must work more closely with the Chibok community members to rehabilitate girls recently rescued.
Those ones that are recently
rescued are being rehabilitated without proper engagements with the parents. And this is very painful to us. We don't know the rationale behind that.
This is very painful to us. We don't know the rationale behind that.
Nigerian President Muhammadu Buhari will be stepping down this month to make way for his successor, Bola Tinubu. The families of the missing girls are reminding the new president of the promises that Buhari made to rescue the abducted Chibok girls. For Timothy Obiezu in Abuja, Nigeria, I'm Vincent Makori, VOA News.
In Sudan, heavy and sustained clashes could be heard on Monday in parts of the capital, Khartoum, hours before the expiration of a shaky ceasefire deal that had brought some hope from a 6-week-old conflict but little humanitarian access. Fighting continued from Sunday into Monday in the south and west of Omdurman, one of the 3 adjoining cities that make up Sudan's greater capital. Sudan's army and the paramilitary rapid support forces have been locked in a power struggle that erupted into conflict on April 15, killing hundreds and driving nearly 1.4 million people from their homes. Both sides have said they are considering extending a deal for a week-long ceasefire brokered by Saudi Arabia and the United States that was designed to allow for the distribution of aid and is due to expire at 9:45 p.m. local time on Monday. Sudan's health ministry says more than 700 people have died as a result of the fighting, though the actual figure is likely much higher. Somalia's government says the country will start electing its president and other officials by direct vote next year. This will end a system of indirect voting in the Horn of Africa country that has endured 3 decades of conflict and clan battles. The country has not had one-person, one-vote elections nationwide since 1969, when the dictator Siad Barre seized power. Instead, clan affiliations have been the organizing principle of Somali politics, with influential roles such as Speaker, Prime Minister, and President divided among the main groups. State legislatures and clan delegates also pick lawmakers for the national parliament, who in turn choose the president. But rivalries between the clans have resulted in decades of strife and political wrangling, which in recent years have been exploited by the al-Shabaab militants aligned with al-Qaeda. A recent report says that despite recent military gains against al-Shabaab, Somali security services are unlikely to be fully ready when African Union forces leave the country by the end of 2024. The report by the Heritage Institute for Political Studies predicts there will be delay in the drawdown of the African Transitional Mission troops in Somalia. VOA's Vincent Makori spoke via Skype with Paul Williams, co-author of the report and professor at the George Washington University here in Washington.
It's a tight timeline that the Somali federal government faces, and obviously the main thing that we found in the report is that the Somali authorities remain heavily dependent on external security assistance from a range of international partners who provide equipment, vehicles, weapons, ammunition, training and field advising to Somali soldiers. And this puts the Somali federal government in a difficult position. It's got an army that it cannot afford, and it's fighting an enemy that it cannot defeat at the moment. And so over the longer term, the Somali government needs to develop an army that's affordable. And the other big conclusion that we found, of course, is that not all those external partners are equal. They're not all equally important. Over the last few years, the United States of America and Turkey have been the absolutely key players supporting the building of a new Somali National Army. The Americans with the Danab Advanced Infantry Brigade and the Turkish government supporting the Gorgor or Eagle infantry battalions. And so working effectively together, the Somali government, the Americans and the Turks is going to be crucial, but it's going to be a very, very tight timeline for the end of 24 to get all these things working on their own before the African force withdraws.
You're implying that the withdrawal by that time is sending a kind of a political message, is a political signal, and it's also about donor fatigue rather than looking at the realities on the ground. Can you elaborate a little bit?
As you may recall, in April of 2022, the old African Union mission in Somalia, AMISOM, transitioned into the new African Transition Mission in Somalia, ATMIS. And that really didn't change a whole lot of things on the ground in the field in Somalia, but it was more a political signal from the donor community that was supporting the African Union mission and sending a signal to the Somali authorities saying, look, this African Union force is not going to be here forever. The external partners that are providing the funding and the logistical support to this mission, they are starting to fatigue. The African Union force has been deployed since 2007 fighting al-Shabaab. So this is now 16 years on. So yeah, it was a political signal that the Somali authorities needed to get their act together and build a coherent and effective set of security forces before the African Union will withdraw its troops.
Talking to Somali officials, they kind of put on a very, very brave face. They're telling us that they have the capacity and the confidence that they can defeat al-Shabaab. Now, do you think that's too ambitious for them?
I think that's a stretch personally, but I will say there's, I think, good news and bad news. The good news is that there has definitely been some progress. If you look at the state of the Somali National Army today, compared to just say 5 or 10 years ago, there's a large degree of improvement in terms of the amount of troops, their training and their effectiveness. And secondly, since the start of offensive operations against al-Shabaab in August of last year, we've definitely seen that the Somali army can work with local clan-based militias and self-defense forces. We've seen American Danab-trained troops and Turkish Gorgor-trained troops collaborate effectively in the field to push al-Shabaab out of a number of towns. But that in of itself is not going to lead, I think, to the military defeat of al-Shabaab anytime soon, and that's why there's still going to be a struggle. There's also, as I mentioned, a financial problem for the Somali government in that it's still relying heavily on external financing to build and train and equip this army, and so that's a problem it's going to have to overcome as well.
That was Paul Williams, professor at the George Washington University in Washington, D.C., speaking with VOA's Vincent Makori. Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo has been ravaged by conflict for many years, resulting in the displacement of millions of people. Among them are countless minors and children who fled from their homes with no parents. VOA's Paul Ndiho was in Goma recently and filed this report.
Over 1,500 people call this camp their new home.
Most of the people here had homes, had their life going on. But because of the ongoing war between M23 and the Congolese forces, all these people that you see here have been forced out of their homes, and now this has become their homes.
Perhaps what is even more distressing is the number of children in this IDP camp. These children are at extreme risk with limited access to food, water, healthcare, and education.
As you can see, there are a lot of young children here. Some of these children don't have parents. They fled as other people were fleeing.
Some of these children are vulnerable to violence and exploitation, with little protection from the harsh realities of life in a war-torn region. Desire Faustin Bajambera, a community leader, fled his hometown of Ruchuru, walking nearly 43 miles to Kahembe IDP outside of Goma in eastern DRC.
We are here because of war. You know, you had people from Ruchuru for this camp because of this or from M23. It is the reason when we are here for this camp.
Bajambera says many of these children can't go to school and have been separated from their families and have nowhere else to go.
These children, he don't know, he cannot go to school because there is no place to go, and he don't have the possibility to go to school, and the main children, he don't have the family here.
Aid experts said the plight of unaccompanied minors and children in IDP camps in eastern DRC is a humanitarian crisis, requiring immediate attention and action from the international community.
The many children don't have a parent.
Community activists say the situation is particularly dire for girls, who are often targeted for sexual violence and exploitation. Many girls are forced into early marriages or prostitution just to survive, further perpetuating the cycle of poverty and hopelessness. Paul Ndiho, VOA News.
The families of 5 prominent Tunisian detainees and 1 deceased opposition member went to Arusha, Tanzania to file petitions at the African Court of Human and People's Rights against the Tunisian government. Speaking to VOA Nairobi, they urged the international community to impose sanctions on the Tunisian government of issues over what they call gross human rights violations.
Living now for almost 2 years through a coup perpetrated by Qais Said against Tunisia's democracy. He has taken over the executive, the legislative branch, and also has sought to control the judiciary by dismissing judges, demonizing judges, dissolving the Supreme Judicial Council, and trying to use the judiciary to eliminate anyone who criticizes him. We are coming to seek justice by filing a petition on behalf of our fathers and other political detainees in Tunisia, because Tunisia is a member of the African Court and its rulings are binding on Tunisia, and we hope it will rule to end the plight that our parents are subjected to.
As for my father, his prison conditions, my father himself, he hasn't been charged. He's actually been sent to prison until they find evidence. All of us, his immediate family, are all in the UK, so the last time we heard from my dad was the day before the 27th February, which is when he was imprisoned. I think it's important as African countries to show solidarity to those that are willing to have a democratic country.
We are filing a case with the African Court on behalf of the families and those who are detained, alleging that there have been significant and serious violations of the African Charter, which we are asking the court to consider and to order appropriate remedies. These are measures that would apply immediately while the case is being considered to protect the rights of the detainees, including that we are asking that they should be released while this matter is being considered with appropriate conditions.
Tunisia is one of only 6 African countries that have fully signed up to the court. This means Tunisians can directly apply to the court. Would like to hear what you think about Africa 54 and all our VOA Africa programs on our website at voaafrica.com. Still to come, Season 3 of the Basketball African League comes to an end. We'll bring you highlights from the big games. Stay with us.
Health, wellness, sport, beauty, medical breakthroughs. Healthy Living cares about your well-being. What are the main health, wellness, sport, beauty, medical breakthroughs? Healthy Living cares about your well-being. What are the main health concerns in Africa and around the world? Find out the latest on coronavirus. Connect with our experts and ask them questions.
How long does the virus stay?
Join me, Linor Moudou, in Washington, every week on Healthy Living. right here on VOA.
In other news, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov met Kenyan leaders on Monday on a surprise visit to Nairobi as Moscow and Kyiv both seek to bolster support from African nations over the war in Ukraine. The Russian Foreign Minister's trip to the East African powerhouse comes on the heels of a trip to the continent last week by his Ukrainian counterpart, Dmytro Kuleba. Gunshots rang out in Libya's capital early Monday following hours of fighting between two armed groups, both aligned with the divided country's United Nations-backed government, according to local medics and media. Several residents in Tripoli were lightly wounded in the clashes, which began Sunday night and spread across several neighborhoods. Before Sudan Army Chief Abdel Fattah al-Burhan got locked into a brutal war with his former deputy, he was propelled to power by powerful Islamists, a tide now turning against him, according to analysts. Under the regime of Omar al-Bashir, Islamists dominated the government, building powerful networks of financial, commercial, and political influence. Al-Burhan has attempted to distance himself from the Islamists by issuing statements against Bashir's old party. Republican and Democratic House leaders expressed optimism Sunday that they will get enough votes in favor of raising the debt ceiling. VOA's Veronica Balderas Iglesias has details on a deal that has, in principle, been struck.
The deadline to increase the borrowing authority of the United States is drawing closer. But some members of Congress are hopeful the nation won't run out of cash. Interviewed on Fox News, Republican House Speaker Kevin McCarthy praised the deal he struck in principle with President Joe Biden in the past hours.
You've got work requirements to help people out of poverty into jobs. You've got reforms that we can build things, cut the red tape. We capped so the president can't just spend money wildly. We're actually spending less than we spent last year. That hasn't happened in Congress. So maybe it doesn't do everything for everyone, but this is a step in the right direction.
Despite some legislators taking to social media to criticize the deal, Republican Representative Dusty Johnson told CNN's State of the Union program that he's heard from several mainstream conservatives that they'll vote in favor.
There will be Freedom Caucus people who vote for this package. So when you're saying that conservatives have concerns, it is really the most colorful conservatives. Overwhelmingly, Republicans in this conference are going to support the deal. How could they not? It is a fantastic deal.
The expansion of work requirements for some recipients of food stamps has raised concerns among some Democrats. Among them, Representative Pramila Jayapal, who also appeared on CNN.
Actually, by some estimates, creates a burden on administrative spending that is actually worse for the overall cost of a program like that. Number two, it is about people who are hungry, people who just need a little bit of temporary assistance.
Before voting in favor of the deal, Jayapal said she'll need more details.
In terms of the exemptions that were put in, for veterans, for folks who are experiencing homelessness, for people who are coming out of foster care.
When pressed by a CBS anchor on whether he'll get all the votes needed and can guarantee the U.S. won't see a default, House Democratic leader Hakeem Jeffries didn't hesitate.
Yes.
The deal will have to pass both the House and the Senate. The Treasury Department has warned that the debt ceiling must be raised by June 5th, so the United States can cover all its financial obligations. Veronica Valderas Iglesias, VOA News, Washington.
Season 3 of the Basketball Africa League has come to an end, an almost 3-month tournament featuring 12 clubs as Egypt's Al Ahly won 2023 championship at the BK Arena in Kigali, Rwanda. Stade Malien took home the third-place title against Petro di Luanda, 73-65. VOA's Jackson Vunganyi has the highlights from the big game.
What a way to close the first quarter. A missed shot by AS Douane results in a rebound by Egypt's Fakwade, who passes to Amin, who finds Omar across the court for 2. Second quarter, and Egypt up by 9, but Senegal's Boise passes to Crawford with a hit to the glass to get the ball in. Less than 2 minutes to go in the first half, and AS Douane down by just 2 when Egypt's Gendi goes up for 2 but misses, and Diaye gets the rebound with a pass to Diop, who scores and ties the game. Egypt up by 5, but Boise finds Malwach, who dunks for a big 2 points. But Alali goes on a run in the fourth with 9 minutes to go. Webster to Fakwade to Zaharan for a long-run shot to extend their lead to 17 points. In the end, Egypt's Alali was crowned the champion at Kigali's BK Arena, defeating AS Douane 80-65 in an exciting third season of the Basketball Africa League.
That's our show for today. See you tomorrow.
They lie here in glory and honor, in quiet rows in Arlington, in cemeteries in Europe, in graves across our country, in towns large and small, America's beloved daughters and sons, who dared all, risked all, and gave all to preserve and defend an idea unlike any other in human history. The idea of the United States of America. Every generation has to defeat democracy's mortal foes. And into every generation, heroes are born, willing to shed their blood for that which they and we hold dear. Our democracy is our greatest gift as a nation, made holy by those we've lost along the way. This is the mission of our time. Our memorial to them must not be just a day when we pause and pray. It must be a daily commitment to act, to come together.